Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Tammy Diedrich, the Managing Editor of IBM Systems Magazine Power Systems Edition, and I'm the moderator for this event. Today's webinar is sponsored by LANSA and is titled Mobile and the IBM I, Why Should You Care? Our featured speakers today are Jon Paris and David Brault. Jon Paris is the co-founder of System I Developer. He spent most of his 45 years in the IT industry working with mainframe systems. In the early 1980s, Jon joined IBM's Toronto lab, where he worked on the COBOL and RPG compilers for the AS400 and was one of the initial team that designed the RPG-4 compiler. Since leaving IBM, Jon spends his time helping customers modernize their applications and development practices through custom training classes, magazine articles, conference education, webcasts, and also as one of the authors of Who Knew You Could Do That with RPG Red Book. Together with his partner Susan Gantner, Jon is also a technical editor for IBM Systems Magazine. David Brault is the product manager at LANSA and draws on his knowledge of the IBM I technology to help determine the market direction for LANSA's products. David has nearly 20 years of application development experience, including extensive involvement integrating IBM I applications with various Windows, web, and mobile technology. David is a member of the Common Americas Advisory Council, also known as the CAC, and is a frequent speaker at Common and other industry events. Jon and David will discuss recent mobile trends and happenings, your mobile development options, and why RPG and COBOL developers may struggle with mobile, as well as share a demonstration of how IBM I developers can leverage their existing RPG and COBOL programming skills to build stunning native mobile apps for Apple and Android that are fully integrated with the IBM I. Following the presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A period, so please feel free to enter your questions in the question panel on your screen anytime during the presentation. Now, without further ado, thanks again for joining us. And Jon, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Good morning to you all, or good afternoon, or whatever it is, wherever you are. We're going to be talking about, as Tammy said, about a number of things, but particularly recent trends and happenings in mobile in general. We'll look at a few survey results and some interesting, if not downright scary at times, data. We'll also talk a little about your mobile development options. You know, what are the options? How do you do it? What are the challenges? And then last but not least, I'll touch briefly on why RPG and COBOL developers in particular have tended to struggle with doing this. And, you know, particularly with emphasis on building native applications, and predominantly that's because object-oriented programming skills are required to do that, and there are many, many new things to learn. So, without further ado, let's just jump straight in. This is a 2013 report card. Now, as you'll see down at the bottom, the source for this data is Cisco, and this was recently updated to include 2013 figures. The first bit at the top was interesting to me, that in 2012, smart devices outnumbered desktop computers for the first time. That's tablets and cell phones outnumbered, and that would include laptops, by the way, in the desktop figure. Even more scary in some respects, in 2013, mobile data traffic grew by 81%. 1.5 exabytes, however many zeros that is. That was a monthly traffic. Then, when you consider that that's grown by 2,000 times since the end of 2012 alone, you get an idea of how important mobile is becoming in our current world. Over 500 million new mobile devices added in 2013. There are now more than 7 billion. That's billion with a B. And smartphones basically account for about 7% of that growth. So, you know, that's a lot. Data usage on iOS devices. This is the one that surprised me, but I think it reflects the fact that the Apple devices, the iOS, iPhone, iPad, still has the dominant share of the business part of mobile usage. And because data usage on those devices still exceeds that of Android, despite the fact that Android sales significantly outsell because of the number of manufacturers involved. The other thing that you mustn't forget when you're looking at your mobile plans is that these data figures include 149 million laptops that were equipped with cellular capability. So that's laptops, netbooks, etc., anything that's not an actual tablet. And what's of interest there, of course, is that the volume of data that they consume on a daily basis is significantly higher than for other devices. So, you know, when you think about your mobile plans, perhaps thinking totally exclusively in terms of phones and tablets is not going to cut it for you. Anyway, if you want to read more of this stuff, and there's a lot of interesting data there, this is a URL, tiny URL I created. Go take a look. It's some really interesting reading. The point I'm trying to make with this, though, is that this is only the beginning. We're never, ever going to spend less time on mobile devices than we do right now. And the more powerful those devices become and the faster the internet becomes, the more significant a role they play in computing as a whole. Also, people are using the devices in a very different context. If you had a web presence, for example, 5 years ago, nobody was accessing it via phone. Now they are, and that has to be a consideration. In fact, the chances are your website will be hit more often by mobile devices than it will by laptops or desktops. You're seeing a greater demand by users to use their own mobile devices with all of the inherent security risks that entails. Those of you who have to be concerned about the security of your applications, this is something you really need to worry about, because with the current pressures on business to cut costs all the time, if all of your sales force are basically turning around and saying, hey, we don't mind using our own devices so that the company doesn't have to pay for them, that's pretty tempting for a lot of businesses. But, you know, BYOD, there are a lot of security risks and control issues you have to deal with there. It's one of the many challenges. I tend to lean towards Apple devices, not just because I happen to be a Mac user, but mostly because, as you'll see when we discuss it briefly later, there are still tighter security controls on the distribution of apps for iOS than there are for Android devices. Let's look briefly at a few figures that are now a little bit out of date, but in reviewing this, I decided they were still relevant. This is back to a report that Signet Research did for IBM Systems Mag back in 2012. As you can see here, over 1,200 IBM I users responded, of which 30-odd% were in management. And 83% claimed to have developed some form of mobile solution, of which 60% were, you know, somewhat happy with what they've achieved. It's rather difficult to tell the scope of that, and in fact, as you'll see when we look at some of the other charts, it's rather difficult to draw conclusions from some of this. If you want to read the full report, including all the additions on mobile security and integration and deployment, which are well worth a read, you can find them all here. These are the reasons that people most often cited, and please excuse the rather funky nature of a couple of these charts. I use Apple's Keynote, and I converted to PowerPoint, and when we uploaded it to WebEx, it went a little strange. So improvements in employer productivity, the most commonly and highly rated one. Improved customer satisfaction, another biggie. Competitive advantage, business process improvement, all of those things are all pretty much of a line there. Interestingly, reducing costs is not usually considered a big factor for mobile. You can see that the cost figure here is not as big a deal as many of the others. Why people want to improve their competitive advantage and don't think it'll improve their revenue, I'm not sure, but anyway. And of course, there's always the odd 2 or 3% who think it's not worth the effort and the better. The business drivers This is the scary one, the number of employees who want to use their own devices to access company systems. But notice how big the customer demand is, which 45% figured that customer demand was a major driver. Business partner access and to be an industry leader, again, quite common figures. Surprisingly, competitors already doing it was not that big a deal, 25%. The really sad one, as far as I'm concerned, is the internal initiative. This is the kind of thing that when I've worked with customers in recent days, I can't remember the last time we actually came across a customer where there was no, if you sat down and thought about it for half an hour, there was no obvious use for mobile. There was no place, very, very few, where there was no place where mobile could play a role and could have significant benefits to the company. And that's the kind of internal initiatives driving things that I'd like to see more of. But sadly, only about 20-odd% seem to be driven by an internal initiative rather than external. A bit of a pity, really. Of the devices given to staff, this is the original chart. But as you can see, BlackBerry was quite high here, so this is a version that I did that basically questions that figure. I think it's far more likely that BlackBerry is down here somewhere now. Notice, though, that the iPhone and iPad, 60%, 50-something%, those are the biggies. Android phone, catching up. Android tablets were well down here. And the advent of new tablets driven by Android, by Samsung and people like that, and the fact that they're selling those things in big numbers in Costco, for example, probably raises those figures significantly. But still very much at the time that this was done, the predominant devices were in the iOS category. Deployment strategies, we'll be talking more about this in a minute, but web, the obvious choice, generally because it's considered simpler. Hybrid and native, we'll talk a little more about the differentiation between those. But native is basically where you get your real horsepower, and web is generally the simplest to implement for most people. And I've got this whacking great group of 40% who were thinking about it, basically. Obstacles, too expensive. Of course, too expensive also, to a certain extent, encompasses no in-house skills. If you haven't got in-house skills, you've got to buy it, and that's going to add to this factor. So those two are not, in all probability, exclusionary. No crucial business need. And again, I think that in many respects speaks to a lack of forethought rather than to any true business needs. Too complex. And that's something that I'm sure David will be happy to talk to later. The complexity of doing mobile is considered to be a major inhibitor. Timing not ideal. I love responses like that, because when is it ever the right time, right? And then you've got about 18% or so down here who didn't think that there were any obstacles to them going ahead and doing it. So the overall drive, those are just a few of the stats. Go read the reports and understand the rationale behind some of that data. But when it comes right down to it, the driving force for mobile is what I've referred to as WWWH. It's what the user wants, whenever they want it, wherever they happen to be at the time, and however they want it presented to them. In other words, if your data is not available to someone when they're sitting on a train, commuting to work in the morning, on their Android phone, then in all probability you're not meeting your end user's needs. They may not be needs that are expressed to you in as many words, but the mobile is about the user. It's really important to understand that it's about the user and the user's experience. It's not really the device. we're computer geeks. We care about the device. But real people don't for the most part. And you can see that in the way that many people switch phones every 6 to 12 months, etc. They just want what they want when they want it and how they want it. That's all there is to it. It's up to us to make sure they can get that. So you've got three basic choices for mobile development options. You can produce a web application, and as we get into HTML5 more and more, these are less and less limited than they used to be. The one thing you must not do is just direct mobile users to a regular web page unless you have no other choice. You should always offer them a choice to go to your regular web page, but if you detect this as an iPhone or an Android phone talking to you, you should really send them to a custom designed web page unless you want to create endless hours of frustration. A native application. This is built specifically for the platform, and this is one of the downsides. You have to build for Android or iOS if you're going to have a 100% true native application. And it's installed on the device much like a desktop application. Generally speaking, the development costs are going to be higher than for a web app, and you're going to have variances for the different devices. Either that, or of course you choose that you're only going to support iOS or you're only going to support Android. Of course, even if you decide to only support Android, you've got to determine which versions of Android you're going to support, but that's a conversation for another day. There's another category called hybrids, and that's a really mushy line. There's no real agreement on what it means. But generally speaking, it's where you have a native set of componentry which is driven by a web-like API. So that is, one of the hybrids are often the vehicle that allow for cross-platform development, so that where you have things like PhoneGap, Appcelerator, Titanium, Grow Mobile, blah, 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 blah. These are tools that allow you to develop native, apparently native apps using a set of components that are built to run natively and which are then driven by a web-like interface. In many cases, the choice that you go through here is going to be governed in part by who your users are. If you're only trying to serve employees, then maybe the speed of a native application and saying thou shalt use only Android is viable. If you're dealing with the general public, then probably a web or a hybrid is going to be more viable because you've got a whole bunch of different interfaces, devices coming at you. So web applications basically are interpreted on the fly, as with any browser. The browser runs in a sandbox and then can only access limited native functionality. As I said, those limits are disappearing slowly, but the net of it is that there's always an extra layer between your code and the device, and therefore they can never perform as well as a native app. You have to make the decision as to whether you need that extra performance. If you've got control over the devices and everyone gets an iPhone 5S, the performance of that device is such that it probably doesn't matter if you're running on the 3G, say, network. On the other hand, if you're dealing with Joe Public and they're coming at you via a browser on a 2-year-old Android device, that speed may matter. Native applications, usually a superior experience, but you basically, if you're developing for iOS, you're writing in Objective-C. If you're developing for Android, you're writing in Java. There's some cross-platform options emerging, but generally speaking, this is where all the development is done. A native application can, however, access the whole stack. Push notifications, camera, microphone, swipes, pinches. It can see everything. Everything you can do on that device, it can handle. So the additional challenges, though, with native apps, there's no Java on iOS, there's no Objective-C on Android, although I saw recently there are some conversion suites that convert from one to the other. Distribution is an issue. Through iOS apps, have to go through Apple's App Store, or ad hoc, but only up to about 100 active users, or you've got to pay for an enterprise license so you can deploy your own apps to iOS, and that's not cheap. It's not horrific, but it's not cheap. Android apps, on the other hand, are just delivered either via Google's Android App Store or a simple download process. Now, Android sounds a lot more attractive, but it's much more risky. In the process that Apple use in validating applications, they make sure that your code isn't trying to do anything or touch anything that it shouldn't. The Google Android App Store doesn't have such strict requirements. So, and simple download, of course, means that you can download anything, including viruses, germs, goodness knows what else. Let's talk a bit about why mobile's hard for IBM people. Even the best of the green screen designers are typically lousy GUI designers. I have seen so many truly horrible GUI designs by 5250 people. It's a different philosophy. Most people just don't get the browser yet. They don't understand what Web 2.0, Ajax 8.5, all of this stuff can do for them. You need new language skills. You need Java or Objective-C, and either which way you need advanced JavaScript if you're going to use cross-platform tools. All of those normally require a fundamental knowledge of object-oriented programming, and most of us RPG programmers don't find that easy. I've often referred to myself in the past as a failed Java programmer, because while I can understand the syntax, I just can't think it. So the challenges as well are part of the problem. When and where are they going to use this thing? Are they going to be on a bus, on a train, watching TV? Don't overcrowd the screen. They're tiny, tiny, tiny screens. Well, other than these whacking great new Samsung phones that for small-headed people look really strange. But don't overcrowd the screen. Don't try to fit everything in. You've got to make use of tabs and pop-ups and other features. Make sure there are no distractions. Make sure there's nothing getting in the way of being able to do the input. Remember, you're dealing with a touch screen where you put menus, buttons, etc. Different OSs have different standards. There's just so much to think about. This is one of the reasons why it's invariably a good idea to either have a standard package that will help you with this, or alternatively, you've got to hire the skills for people who understand it. You've got to remember your finger's not a mouse. Other help isn't going to work. So things that you might use with your regular browser or PC apps, that's not going to help. Target area has to be big enough to avoid fat fingering things. Visibility of status, the little wheel going around or whatever. The user's got to know what's happening. Small screens. There's a 5250 for you on an iPhone. Isn't it wonderful? Until you actually want to type something, and then it becomes problematic. But you can, of course, turn the screen sideways so the keyboard at least is visible. Those are actually my fingers. That's how difficult it is for me to type on this stupid thing. So you've got to be very, very conscious of the design and the layout and where the keyboard is and how they use it. So just to wrap up, there are many, many challenges, but the potential rewards of doing all this are huge. Some of the clients we've talked to in insurance industry who have deployed this for insurance assessors, people just in the warehouse to locate pallets and locate goods, the rewards are absolutely gigantic. But perhaps more importantly, the risks of not doing it are even bigger. But you're going to need to look to your skills and your tooling. And in terms of using your existing skills to make a mobile app work for you in your shop, I think David's got a few ideas that might help you. So I'm just going to hand over to him and let him tell you all about this stuff.
All right, thanks, John. As soon as I get control here, I will share my desktop. Okay, hopefully everybody sees my screen. Welcome everyone. Once again, my name is David Brault. I'm the product manager here at LANSA. And today I'm going to be covering, as John just alluded to, how you can build native mobile applications using your existing RPG and or COBOL skills. Now, anybody who's ever sat in any of my presentations before knows I like to kick off a session with a quote that ties to the subject at hand. And today I'm going to quote a song from U2 where Bono says, "Every generation has a chance to change the world." So if you're wondering how is this related to mobile, well, just take a moment to think about how the essence of a computer, program, really hasn't changed over the years. Programs receive an input and they respond with an output. What has changed, though, over the decades is how each generation interacts with these programs. And this generation that we're dealing with now, they expect to have mobile interfaces. So it's really up to us in IT. We're the ones who need to react. We need to have an answer. We need to have a solution for this new mobile paradigm. Now, unfortunately, there's too many IBM companies out there singing the Beatles song, "Nothing's going to change my world," while this whole mobile revolution is going on around them. And really, this is unfortunate because here's our chance to use the IBM as a source of innovation and competitive advantage instead of being referred to, "Oh, you guys work on that old legacy system." So LANSA, we've actually been in the mobile game for a long time. I don't think people realize how long we've been doing it. It's well over a decade now. My guess is, as for the reason why they don't remember, is because of this. Back when we started out, it was called wireless, as you can see here from one of our wireless advertisements from 2002. Now, for example, in that same year, one of our customers, the city of Portage in the state of Michigan, used LANSA to build a mobile web application for their park rangers, and they actually used it using an internet-connected wireless PDA to replace a very manual, paper-based process of how their park rangers monitored and maintained all of their public areas, things like parks and playgrounds, streets, parking lots, etc. So going wireless allowed them to reduce their paper costs and their paper waste, and they were able to turn 2- and 3-day processes into same-day processes. Now, the city of Portage was actually awarded the state of Michigan's Innovative Use of Technology Award because the project was so successful, and it was using leading-edge technology at that point in time. So remember, this was 5 years before the iPhone, 6 years before Android. So obviously, LANSA has been doing mobile for a long, long time. Now, if we fast forward a decade, LANSA once again is at the forefront of mobile, this time leading the pack by releasing the first and only native mobile app development tool for IBM developers. So we have a product called Long Range, and what it allows RPG and COBOL developers to do is use their existing skill set to build native mobile applications for the IBM. So there's, as John mentioned, with our tool, there's no need to learn Objective-C for Apple or learn Java for Android. For example, last year, Kawasaki, the plant that's located in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the plant that builds all the ATVs and jet skis and their larger utility vehicles. They use Long Range to arm their assembly line workers and their inventory specialists with iPads and iPod touches right on the production floor. So instead of having assembly line workers manually creating pick tickets called Kanban cards for more parts at their workstation when they were running low, instead they just had team members going up and down the assembly line with these iPads with Bluetooth connected scanners, automating this entire process for them. And the project was wildly successful, saved them about $3,500 per day in labor costs. And actually it was so successful it caught the eye of IBM and Common, and they won the 2013 Innovation Award. So there's 2 examples of LANSA customers earning innovation awards for their use of mobile more than a decade apart. Now, John did a fabulous job describing the differences between the various types of mobile apps, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. But as you can see, there's this sliding scale of benefits being the user experience and trade-offs being the cost and time to market as you move up the scale from mobile web to hybrid to native. Now, before you discount the importance of the user experience, recent studies have revealed that users will not recommend a business with a poorly designed mobile application and often turn to a competitor's application after a bad mobile experience. So we can't underestimate the importance of delivering a great user experience for our mobile users. So here is where long range comes into the picture. So with long range, developers are able to, again, leverage their existing skills, RPG or COBOL, to build native applications, again, the ones with the best user experience possible, because, again, long range is a native application. It's not a web or a hybrid. Second, long range applications deploy natively to both Apple and Android devices from the same set of code. So with long range, your company never has to, again, as John alluded to, develop two identical versions of the same application just because you want to deploy to Apple and Android, one version in Objective-C and one version in Java. And by the end of the year, just as an FYI, long range will support the new Windows mobile platform, which will be providing a third deployment option, again, from a single code base. And lastly, long range, it's just plain old easy to use. There's no powerful JavaScript editor to use. There's no just a small amount of JavaScript to learn. There's no generated HTML that's easy to modify. There's none of that, right? With long range, you simply build native applications with the language you already know and love. Now, according to Ezra Daniels, he's an RPG developer at Brown's Ice Cream. For those of you who have had the chance to taste their fabulous wares, he says LANSA gives you everything you need and provides an easy way to place it on the screen. It flows very well, but most importantly, he says it's really not any harder than writing RPG. Now, we've been very busy since we released Long Range just 2 short years ago. We're about to release runtime version 16 in the next couple of weeks, so 16 releases of our product in 2 years. It just goes to show how rapidly mobile is evolving. We're also improving our offline capabilities. We're now on the 3rd generation of our offline support, which again makes building disconnected applications easier than before. And one of the benefits, again, is your ability just to use your RPG or COBOL skills. There's nothing new to learn to build either offline or online applications using long range. Now, probably one of the most significant new features for long range is something that we have called EasyEye, and it's a set of APIs and templates. And the EasyEye templates allow you to create mobile applications even faster than before. And the APIs, this is the cool part, allow you to build applications without having to create display files. So you strictly code in RPG or COBOL. There's no DDS. There's no display file restrictions when you use the API options or the EasyEye options. All right, so instead of me just sitting here and talking about long range the entire time, let me show it to you. So this is the part that sometimes goes well, sometimes doesn't. I'm going to use a product here called Reflector to hopefully be able to share my screen with everybody today. So hopefully, yay, it's a good demo day. So again, I'm just using a product called Reflector that's going to allow me to take my iPad and move it to my Windows PC. So it's just using the internet to take the screens off my iPad and display them on my laptop. So that's why once in a while you'll see a lag of going from screen to screen. Just remember that you're not physically seeing my iPad. You're seeing, iPad. You're seeing my screen being mirrored to my laptop. So I'm going to touch on the long-range application. What I want to show everybody today is a couple of things. First off, I'm showing you some shipped examples that come with long range. So when you install the long range application, you get everything I'm about to show you here today. If you'd like to have this demo installed on your device after the webinar, hang on, I'll have my contact details. You can just email me, I'll shoot you a link on how to install it seamlessly and quickly onto your device. So part of this shipped demo is 2 things. One's called a human resources application, which you see here, and one's called programming examples. I'm just going to walk through both of those. The human resources application just gives you an idea of the types of applications you can build. So I clicked on employees here. This is just a real quick little employee application. It's let me just refresh. Let's look at some names that start with F. It says refresh the screen. Here's everybody whose first name starts with F. If you kind of focus towards the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see there's a little notepad icon. We call this a context menu because what you can do is change the context of what menu options appear here depending upon what you're doing. So as you can see, this is a pretty robust context menu. So I can either hit Show Details to see everything about the employee, or I can get to specific things, call a number, text a number, email them, etc. So, or I could just come in here and just actually touch on a particular employee, and it'll take me into the details as well. So you see we still have our list of employees to the left, and now we have our employee details here on the right. A couple things I just want to point out is native integration with the device. So look next to the mobile phone number, there's a little telephone. If I click on this, this gives me the ability now to either text or call this person. So let me text SMS. What I want you to notice, this actually brings up the native text messaging window for the device. I'm currently on an iPad, so this is iOS. Notice it didn't bounce me out of my application and bring up the messaging program. I'm still inside of long range, but because it's native, I'm able to bring in other native applications inside of it. So I can just come right here and text somebody. Also, I can click on the phone button, and if I was, as you see here, it says the device does not support phone calls. If I was running on an iPhone, this would actually bring up the native dialer right here and call that person without me having to bounce out to my phone application. Other things I can show you on here, what you'll notice is we have the ability to do the same thing with an email. When I click on the email icon down here at the bottom, what you'll notice, it brings up a new email message. Again, this is not bouncing me out to mail or Gmail program to fire up an email. It's embedded now inside of long range because it is, in fact, a native application. So let me just hit cancel here, delete my draft. One other thing here I'd like to show you at the bottom is the ability to do a signature capture. Even though we do specimen signature, that kind of reminds me of things when I go to the doctor, but we're just going to do a signature capture. And sorry, I'm making my coworker laugh here. I'm going to do a signature capture, but you can do that on many devices, but I want to show you here. I'm just going to sign my name. When I hit Save Changes, I want you to focus on the left-hand side of the screen. So what you'll notice is that in the list of users, because, again, this is a native application, we're able to do merging of multiple images together at a time. So we're taking, if I scroll to the top here, we're taking the picture of that person and blending together that signature to produce what you see on the left-hand side. So we haven't modified that image. We're actually we're putting two images together in real time. Let me bounce over to the incident system. This is a real sample, a quick example of how you can have an incident system for your organization. Once again, this is just the ability to view incidences. All this information is coming out of DB2. If you look over here on the left-hand side, we have these icons, and you'll see this is a common theme amongst all long-range applications, the ability to attach notes and photos to a particular incident. So, for example, if I touch on the camera icon here, I can just touch here to say I want to attach a photo. Down at the left-hand corner, I can either select the photo that's already in my gallery or touch the Take New button. I'll just take a picture of my barcode that I'm going to use later on in the demo. And that'll be good enough for this. I'll touch the Use Photo. And when I click Done, it brings it back saying, here's the photo. I can add a caption if I want, but I'll just hit Save. And once I hit Save, it's actually moved this photo up to the IFS. And you'll notice the camera now has a little number 1 next to it. And anybody else using this application now has access to the photo that I had just taken. Same thing with notes, the ability to attach a note to any record in your DB2 database file. This just brings up the note application. There's currently 2. If I touch on the little icon, it allows me to add a new one, and we'll do that now. I'll just say hello here. And we'll hit Save. And you'll see the note icon goes to 3. And again, anybody else using this application now has that third note in real time, and it has the ability to read what I just punched in. So I just touched on that first row there, and we'll go in and look at the details quickly. And as you can see here, we're now presenting all the information on the screen. You'll see the notes has a 3 by it, the images has a 1. If I wanted to see those notes or images, I could just touch on those icons. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see, again, telephone and the email ability to invoke those native controls into the application. Here's another example of a context, and I'm just going to drag this up a little bit here. You'll notice the address of this incident actually took place in Amsterdam. Let's say it took place right here where I'm doing this demo. Instead of me punching that information in, I can use one of these context menus that deals with GPS. So I'm going to select the first one here called Insert All Location Details. And what it's going to do, it's going to use the GPS information from my device and punch in all that information. So it knows I'm at 3010 Highland Parkway. That's our office here in Downers Grove. It knows my longitude information, even knows my altitude. So again, instead of the user having to enter that information, do work for them. Let's take a look at another program here. Let's take a look at an assets program. I'm selecting this one because one of the most common features that a lot of our customers use is the ability to barcode scan and use that feature with the device. So for example, if you look at the scan field, you see there's a little icon that kind of looks like a wave. If you touch that, this will allow me to, oh, you see how quick that was. Let me do it again just so you don't I'll bring it in a little slower here. So here's my list of barcodes. As soon as it sees it, it grabs that barcode and brings the information in for that particular item. Again, you can see we've attached notes and images. I'm actually going to show you this image one here because this one has another nice little feature. So let's say I want to attach a photo here. Let me. I know this is probably going to backfire, but I'm going to turn the camera around here. I'm going to take a selfie. I'm going to give you a funny face. Okay, so I just gave you a nice funny face, and you'll see why I'm going to give you a nice funny face here. There's a rumor going around the office that in a previous life I used to be a pirate. So let's say I want to make myself look like a pirate. So if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you see the button there called Annotation. This allows me to draw on the photo that I just created. So I'm going to change the color from red to black. And I'm going to make the thickness a little bit bigger here. I'm going to draw just a little patch over my eye because that's what pirates have, right? I'm going to fill that in a little strap. Make the line a little thinner, give myself a nice little pencil mustache here like the pirates have. And there you go. So now I look like a pirate. But what we're trying to get at here is using the native device to be able to take advantage of features, in this case annotation, to add value to the data being collected. So in a more practical situation, if you're a delivery driver and you're dropping off some goods and something is damaged, here's your ability to take a picture of that particular item and maybe draw on there showing exactly where the damage took place. If I hit save here, again, this will update this to the IFS and attach that photo to the record. So what I'm going to show you guys next, and girls, is another part of the SHIP demo, and that is something called programming examples. So again, along with the long-range application, we ship over 100 examples. And each one of these examples has the full source code behind it, so you can see exactly how those applications were built. So you can see that we've broken it out by different categories. There's introductory, advanced, use cases, EZI, web views, et cetera, et cetera. Let me just touch on introductory. I guess the easiest one to walk through would be a hello world here. So I'm going to just run the hello world application. What this allows me to do, let me just type something in here. We'll stick with the pirate theme here. I'll just type in shiver and timbers. Okay, so all this application does is takes whatever data you've typed in and retrieves it back in the RPG program and just echoes it back to the interface. So if you look at the bottom, it says the RPG program says you typed shiver me timbers in. So let's take a look at the code here. So anytime you want to look at code, if you look in the upper right-hand corner with that box with the vertical arrow, you touch on that, and this will allow you to see the code for it. Now, at a bare minimum, every example has RPG and DDS if there is DDS for that application. Some of them also have examples of how you would code it in COBOL, and if there's any CL developers on today's call, there's even CL examples. So let me just show you the RPG quick. It's a nice, simple application, and it's easy to walk through, so you get an idea of what the anatomy of a long-range application looks like. So up top, you're just binding to the long-range service. We have a couple of includes that allows you to get to some of those long-range APIs. Okay. So if we scroll up here, you can see the mainline loop is basically a do loop. And you can code this any way you want, but again, this is typically how people code it. They'll have a do loop that just runs until the application's finished. And inside there, they have a couple routines, a couple subroutines. One's called handle requested action. The other one's called display form view. So if we go to handle requested action, you'll see here, if we go down a little bit, we're just setting the echo text. That's the text that goes back to the user. We're setting that to blank. We're checking to see if the text that they entered is blank. And if it's not, we just concatenate, the RPG program says you typed in with whatever they typed in with the word in. And then if not, we just send the saying, hey, you didn't type anything in. Then you go to the display form view subroutine, and this is where we now interact with the device. So you'll see, if you look at the second line, there's our execute format command. Surrounding every execute format command are a couple of long-range APIs, one called send, one called receive. And this is just how long-range talks back and forth between the device. So send puts together all the information you want to send to the device, and once you hit your execute format, that's when the screen's displayed. And then after the user types information in or hits certain actions on the device, all that information comes back to you with the receive command, and now you have visibility into those actions and that data from your RPG. And I'll show you that an example here too. So again, real simple application, but it's an easy way to walk through and walk through the code. Actually, I can show the DDS here too if you're interested. So if I say display DDS, you'll see here we just have we have a label and a couple fields, or one field and then the echo text. So the entry field is 80 characters, the echo text is 120, and we just laid it out that way. Okay. Let me show you something else. And so you can see there's anything control-wise that you want to be able to put onto a screen. They have examples how to do this, from dates and placeholders, opening up URLs, changing the screen shapes and size. But one other one under introductory that's of value is this keyboard data types. Let me show you this. This is really cool because, again, it's a native application, and since the native application knows the field type of all of your fields on the screen, it can actually take care of swapping out keyboard layouts for you. So, for example, name is currently an unspecified field, so it just brings up the stock standard keyboard. But watch what happens when I touch on zip code. It automatically changed the keyboard layout for me. I, as a user, didn't have to do that. So anybody who's done a lot of data entry on a mobile device knows how not fun it is to switch out these keyboards as you're trying to do data entry. So let the device do that for you. There's actually a third format. Let me go back to the name so you get back to the stock standard keyboard. Entering an email address is probably one of the most horrible things you can enter on an iPad. There's 3 different keyboard layouts you have to go to if you use things like underscores and dashes and stuff like that. But watch what happens when I touch or put focus on the email address. It actually changes now to that email formatted keyboard. So you have the @ sign, you have the period, you have the underscore, you have the dash, because those are common characters that people tend to put into their applications. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Let's just go back now to, let's take a look at advanced. There's one thing I want to show you in particular that's pretty cool. But as you can see under advanced, how do I work with text and images? How do I work with tables? How do I work with locations, calendaring, drilling down, different types of forms? I guess it's not in there. We'll look at use case examples. What I want to find is the ability to see the device details. Where is that? Right here, mobile device details. Check out this program. This program doesn't do anything other than relay information that's available to you in your RPG program. So everything that you see up there, these are variable values. So for example, it knows that I'm running on an iPad. So your RPG program knows that this user for this session is running on an iPad. They know the category type is large because I'm running on an iPad, not an iPad mini. If it was an iPad mini, it would say medium. If I was running on an iPhone, it would say iPhone, and it would say category small. Why this is important is because you have access to this information in your RPG programs, and maybe you want to lay out the screens differently accordingly. Right? So if I'm running on a phone, maybe my grid only has 2 columns. If I'm running on iPad mini, maybe it has 4 columns, and if I'm running on a normal-sized iPad, it has all 7 columns. So it gives you the ability to change things out from your RPG knowingly, because you have full visibility into what type of device that user is running. Also, if you look down, it knows it's running in landscape versus portrait. So depending upon how they turn how they have the device turned, you can do things differently accordingly. So again, there's a lot of really neat things that you have available to you from your RPG because long range provides those types of variables for your RPG coding. Let me quickly show you barcode scan. Oh, wrong one. Let me show you barcode scanning here. What this allows you to do is, I like to show this because it shows how easy it is to embed things that are as advanced as barcoding into an application. So you see that we have 2 different types of barcode scanners here. One's a single and one is a list. The difference being with the single, it's just a one-hit, go grab some data, display some information. But maybe you want to gather a whole bunch of barcodes. Imagine you're unloading a truck and you just want to scan a whole bunch of boxes, then process that entire list. You have that option as well. So I'm going to touch on the single first. and just bring my barcode in front. You'll see it pops up, but watch what happens when I touch the scan button on the bottom for the list. I can go through here and get all these guys. Okay, it looks like I scanned them multiple times here. I think they're going to come back a few times. But as you can see, I was able to scan all those. There's an option, I'll show you this here in a second, we can turn off duplicates. But this is very easy to do. Let me show you the magic where this happens is actually in the DDS. Let me show you the DDS for this. What you can do is basically we have two barcode scanners on there. As you can see, one is the single and one is the list. If you look at, can I put my mouse on here? Oh yeah, cool. So if you look at type, we said it's type barcode. That's what gives it, makes it a barcode scanner on the screen. You don't have to know anything else other than saying, give it a type of barcode. You see this barcode type is down here for the list as well. What differentiates it from a single to a list is multiple entries no and multiple entries yes. That's what makes it a list type of barcode scanner versus a single. And if you see we have allowed duplicates yes, if I would have turned that to no, I would have only those 3 barcodes but I came across instead of duplicating the scans over and over again. But the important part to realize here is if you want to do something as cool as barcode scanning in your applications, you don't have to know the underpinnings on how to make it work. Long range is taking care of that complexity. You just have to know there's a type of barcode and there's some parameters. As you can see here, there's different scanner types you can turn on and off. If you want to have a UPCA on or off, or code 128, code 39, if you want to only do QR codes, you can turn all the other scanners off. You have the ability to really fine-tune how you want to use either a Bluetooth connected scanner or the camera built into the device as a scanner, what types of barcodes you'd like to work with. Okay, let me show you another one here. Let me actually just go to the easy. But again, there's other things here. There's how do I work with QR codes? How do I again create display files with no DDS? How do I work with photos? How do I annotate those images? How do I record a voice snippet? How do I record a video snippet? Again, all that is built in natively to the long-range platform. Let me show you some of these EasyEye examples. Again, what EasyEye allows you to do is build applications strictly from your code. There's no DDS, so there's no display files. There's no limitations you have to worry about. So you can see there's 5 different types of quick panels. If I select the first one, it's just an easy way for me to be able to display information on a screen and not only display it, but also to be able to share it with this share button right here. Okay, I can email that information to somebody, text it, copy it to the clipboard, or print it. All this is part of the EasyEye API. It's very easy for you to embed that into your application. You can get even more advanced. You can go to Quick Panels 5. Here's another variation of these quick panels if you want to have different types of quick panels. Now, why these EasyEye controls are so important is we can change the style of this. So if you look on the upper right-hand corner, you see there's a change style button. All this program does is display the same data inside these EasyEye controls, but we're just changing parameters as I click on the change style. So right now we're looking at style 1. I think when I click on style 2, where's my mouse here, you'll see these borders go away. It's a very subtle change. So when I click on change style, yep, those have gone away. When I click on change style, once again, it's a completely different look and feel than what we saw before. But again, the benefit here is you can drastically change the UI, and all you're doing is setting parameters for the EasyEye controls. It's a very simple way of building these applications. Going back to the menu here, again, it shows you how to do create image bars if you want to have image bars as a menu, how to work with other different types of tables. I've been getting the 10-minute warning here, so I'm going to just quickly show you one last thing. There's offline capabilities, so if you want to know how to use the offline capabilities, it shows you how to do that and all the code behind it. A lot of people ask about web views. Can I stick a web view in here like a traditional hybrid? So a hybrid is a native application that's embedding web applications. You can do that with long range as well. This shows you how. So for example, if I click on web views in a form view, this will actually load up 2 browser sessions inside of one native panel. Here we have the LANSA website and we have Apple's website. People often ask about charting. Can you work with Google Charts? So we have a couple examples in here. And again, if you want to see how to do this, here's the RPG, and here's the GDS code behind it. I think we have a better one for Google Charts where if you actually click on something, it'll show you the information. So here we have a new Google chart with the graph, and if you touch on one, it actually tells you what the data is behind that. Okay, so again, you can do really neat things. All the code there on how to do this is provided for you. So there's 100 examples for basically anything you'd ever want to be able to do, native mobile app-wise, and how you do it with the RPG and or COBOL. Okay, so with that, I'm going to just stop sharing my device here. Okay, get back to the demo. Get back to the PowerPoint. So now that we've seen what a long-range application looks like, let's take a look and see what the okay, how come it doesn't want to do this? Let me take a look here. Okay, let's try this again. All right, so what does the development environment look like? So what users do is they download. All right, so in terms of your users, what do? They download and then install the long-range application. It's been configured to point to your IBM server. Since you're coding long-range using your RPG, COBOL, or even CL skills, again, your native apps will now have full access to everything on the IBM. There's nothing you can't access because the development is identical to how you develop today. So anything you can access via RPG today, you can do that as well. Moving on here, in terms of development and how it works at runtime, when a user selects an option, it knows what RPG program to call. If you have any DDS, it'll take that DDS and combine it with data that you've collected, and then use XML to send that back to the device. And then this is just how it works. They click on something else, in this case a scanner. It passes back the barcoded number that they've scanned to your RPG program. You do whatever you want to do with it. Then once you have that information in play, if you have any DDS, you don't have to have DDS if you're using EasyEye. It'll take that information and send it back, and that's how you render the screens. Okay. In terms of building it, there's two different things you need to do. There's two environments. There's Long Range Studio and then your current RPG source editor. So Long Range Studio is where you set up the entire mobile framework. That dictates how things get laid out, where things are placed, what programs are called when they touch on certain areas of the screen. I don't want you to let the studio name fool you. There's no development that goes on inside of Long Range Studio. It's fully a point-and-click environment. So in terms of development, Long Range, as I mentioned before, is no different than how you code RPG today. So if you're using Rational Developer, you'll continue to do so. If you're using PDM and SU, you'll continue to do that as well. Long Range doesn't care what source editor you use. The only thing you need in addition to those is a device to test them on. Again, this is a native application, so it is not you can't test it in a browser or anything like that because it's not web, it's not hybrid. You have to test it on a device because it is, in fact, a native application. Okay? Real quickly, what a screenshot of what Studio looks like. Again, it's all point and click. You come in here, you set up your menu options, you set up your descriptions, you set up the icons, what programs get called when they touch on a certain item. That's all done here. No development inside of Long Range Studio. And then lastly, we'll just quickly touch on security because people often ask about how secure are the applications. Security was actually a core design consideration because we knew we had to protect your data and your business applications as you push it out. So we support things like IBM I security up to level 50. All the user IDs and passwords are encrypted. They're never cached and stored on the device. Your IT departments can actually restrict access by IP address and or device name if you really want to lock it down. We have support for SSL, TLS, and VPN technologies, and communication traffic is compressed. Okay? Last thing, I promise, if you want to be able to play around with this tool for free, you can do so. We have something called Long Range University. It's a free environment. You don't have to be a customer to use this. It shows you how to install the apps on your server. And then there's a bunch of tutorials on how you can build native apps on your IBM I using your DB2 data. Okay, so you can go to longrangeunit.com to find out more about that. And here's my contact information. If anybody wants to have the sample application that I walked through today with all those RPG applications, there's my contact information. Just shoot me an email. I'll send you a hyperlink. It'll show you exactly how to set up. You just click on a couple links. It'll download the application for you and then set it up to point to our server. Okay. Also go to longrange.com if you'd like to find out more about the products, and Long Range Univ if you'd like to be able to run through those tutorials on your server You get a 45-day free trial, and you can walk through the solution and be able to do that on your box. So with that, I'll pass control back to Tammy. Sorry for going over, guys and girls.
Thanks, Dave. That was great. So normally we would take a few questions now, but I think because I want to be very respectful of people's time, we will get back to you via email with any questions that you've already submitted. And please do take note of Dave's email if you want to send any questions directly to him. Otherwise, anything you have put in to the question panel, we'll get back to you on. But thank you so much, Dave and Jon, for sharing your expertise with us today. Just a quick note that we will be sending out a link early next week to a recording of today's presentation to everyone who's on the call, as well as to anyone who registered for the event but for whatever reason couldn't make it. So that concludes our webinar. I want to thank everyone for attending, and have a great day.